Hey gang, welcome back to Let's Level Up. My name is Rick. Today we're going to be talking about a Kickstarter game called The Fifth Land by P.A.W.S. or the Prime Alien Watch Squad. Now, The Fifth Land actually takes place in the year 2099 in a post-apocalyptic world. Our polar ice caps have melted and pretty much flooded all of the inhabitable lands, save a few. So each player is going to control a civilization pretty much hell-bent on controlling those lands. The objective of the game is to be the first player to get 5 lands. If you get 5 lands, congratulations, you win the game. What really makes the Fifth Land, I think, a lot of fun and definitely a game worth checking out is that it's pretty accessible for a war game. There's a lot of really easy mechanics that bring together a much more complicated system and offers plenty of room for strategy. Now I will say this, the Fifth Land may not be the best 2-player game out there, although it would be, I think, a good way to teach the game with 2 players. The games are just over too fast to really get a good feel of what everything, or rather what the game can do. In a 2-player war game, I know that the player across from the table from me is my enemy. When you get into 3 players or 4 players, I can actually have a little bit of table politics going on. There could be some deals going on. There could be some trade going on. There could even be a little bit of backstabbing going on. And the Fifth Land is going to excel in this arena. I liken it to a version of Game of Thrones 2nd Edition that's cut down to about 45 minutes. Now there's a little bit more economy building in this game, which I think is really interesting. And what we're going to do now is actually show you on the table a little bit of the different action phases that are going to happen in the game and what I like about the game. And then after that, we'll wrap up with our final thoughts. Welcome to Fifth World. In this game, the polar ice caps have melted and caused most of the world's land masses to be completely uninhabitable because they're submerged underwater. Now, in this game, we're actually going to be laying down tiles that are completely modular with each other and producing a randomized arena every time we play this game. Now, there are a ton of different possibilities for how these tiles can be arranged, and the different land masses, resources that are connected to each other can always be different. It means this game is going to be highly replayable just from the fact that this is going to have a modular board, which I think is really neat. In this game, we play one of a few different types of nations. In this set, I've got a play set of basically 4 nations. The Dionysus Coalition, which is represented by the orange pieces on the board, and they have a special ability to give you oil. There's the Demeter Federation, they have a special ability to give you food. There's the Poseidon Empire, who has the special ability to give you additional ships in the game. And I have also the Hephaestus League, which can give you additional gold during the game. And what each of these resources that I just mentioned are very key to how the game itself is played. So let's take a look at the actual board really quick, a little bit closer. So each of these hexes that we have on board are actually going to be different types of locations where we can have as many units on there as we'd like. There are land units, sea units, and even air units in these games. Your player color here is denoted to let you know that you're a member of that particular faction. There are even gray neutral units to essentially not give people free spaces. Now the objective of this game is to have a land unit on up to on 5 different land tiles. You can see that the sea tiles here are blue. Each of these land tiles is divided, and maybe not divided, but has at least one type of resource on it. And it's halved. So this particular tile gives me 1 oil and 1 gold resource, whereas this tile gives me 2 gold. This tile gives me, 2 food. This tile gives me 1 food and 1 oil, or whoever controls that. Now this game is going to play in a series of phases, and I think it actually plays really interestingly. The first phase is going to be the interest and loan phase. So if we take a look at one of the actual player cards here, we have the interest and loan section at the bottom of this card. Now, the first time I take a loan, I'm going to get $50 million, but I have an interest rate of $10 million per round. The second time I take a loan out, I'm going to get another $50 million, but have an interest rate of $30 million per round. And finally, I can take a third $50 million section, but have an interest rate of $50 million per round. Now, this interest is going to, the amount of money we're talking about is in millions, which shows you the state of the world economy and how bad things have gotten once all the ice caps have melted. So in this first phase of the game, we're basically just going to be able to make a decision and pay off any loans that we may have, but make a decision to actually borrow money from the other world leaders and from the banks in order to keep our resources coming in. Now, it's going to cost money each time we want to bring a resource in. So for instance, this area right here is going to yield 1 gold and 1 oil, but that's going to cost us $5 million just to get that yield. So these resources are going to be tracked again on our player card on the left side of it. So we have a section for gold, we have a section for oil, and we have a section for food. Now, when we're going around and doing things with our units, resources are going to come really big into play, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The next phase is going to be the military and resource expenses. Every turn, you're going to have to pay $1 million for each unit that you have on the board. You will also make a decision on every location that you control that has resources, whether it be land or sea, and determine whether or not we want to pay the $5 million to yield how many ever of that resource that we're going to get for each of the areas. After all the players have done that, you're going to go into a military build-up phase. Now, I can buy as many units as I want. However, it's going to cost $1 million and $1 million and 1 resource for each unit that I buy. So if I wanted to buy 3 tanks, it would cost me $3 million plus 3 resources. Now, it could be any resources I want, but when we're talking about these resources in this game, they're very limited. So that isn't actually a pretty expensive price anytime when it comes to actually charging us those resources. The next phase is going to be the world market trading, which is going to lead us into this big tableau here. This world market represents the amount of money that it costs to actually buy, or what these resources are currently trading at. And you'll notice that we have all 3 of the main resources plus a 4th military resource. So the top track there represents gold. If my marker is currently at a 2, that means it's going to cost us $2 million per gold if we want to buy, and we can sell at that same price. Anytime we buy, we're going to adjust the track to the left. It means the price is actually going to increase because there's more demand. And anytime we sell, it's going to increase to the right. And anytime we sell, it's going to decrease to the left. So if I have a gold and I can sell it, and the current value is 2 million, I can sell 1 gold for 2 million, and it would drop the price to 1. The same thing for oil, food, and actually military resources as well, or actually units. Now, one of the questions I had when I played this game is, why is military units part of this whole tableau when I just spent the previous turn actually buying military units? First and foremost, it does not take any resources to get units here, which is huge. At any time that we actually are going to be manipulating our forces, it's going to cost us resources, not only to just move them, but to also to execute things like attacks, which could be very, very bad for us if it goes unchecked for too long. So that being said, let me just tell you just a quick example of how combat like that would work. So on your turn, you can activate one of your tiles that has creatures on it, or sorry, has units on it, and then you can actually declare whether or not you want those units to move, or if you want to execute attack. And if you execute attack, you have to declare a valuable target. So if I'm right here and I want to declare attack here, I've got 1 unit, he's got a unit there, and I can execute attack. Now, what's really unique about this is that I actually have to pay resources to make that attack happen as the attacking player. As a defender, I don't have to pay anything. So the prices for doing that is actually here again on the tableau, and it's going to cost us 1 of each type of resource. So it's going to cost us 1 gold, 1 oil, and 1 food to execute an attack. There's also a strength here. The strength is going to be, if I have 1 to 2 units, 1d6. If I have 3 to 4 units, it's going to be 1d12, and if I have 5 or higher, it's going to be a d20. Now, I see also here they have a 1 die 6, 2 die 6, and then 3 die 6, but then the official rules that I played with, it was the d6, d12, and d20. You can also support, and every time you're actually going to remove a unit for every 3 points that you roll. So if I roll a 6 on my die, I can potentially remove 2 units. Attack damage and defense damage are happening at the same time. So this is not something that I just need to roll higher than my opposing player. And potentially, I could roll a 3 in this combat and remove this unit. They could roll a 3 as well and remove my unit. So we can potentially blow each other up in a combat and make things really bad for everybody. Combat is devastating in this game. Add on top of the fact that we actually have to spend our hard-earned resources to do that, it's really, really powerful. To actually move your units as well. Let's say this unit wasn't here and I wanted to move a land unit over that way. To remove a land unit, it would cost me 1 food resource. If it was a boat, it would cost me 1 oil, and if it was a plane, it would cost me 1 oil as well. Now, the boats and the planes have special movement rules, and they can move a lot further than just 1 adjacent hex like a land unit can. If you take all of this stuff together and factor in the fact that we've got boards that are completely random, this game has a lot of different options. Not only does it have a really neat world economy option here, let me just zoom out really quick. With this tableau, I can actually, in a 3 to 4 player game, I can actually manipulate the prices of these resources and backstab somebody without ever actually physically engaging them in combat. So if I know somebody's really hard up on gold and I'm okay with gold, I can drive up the price of gold and make sure that they're not going to be able to get any of that. Again, in order to execute a combat, I have to have 1 of each of the types of resources. And that, at the end of the game, or rather in the middle of the game, could be really huge depending on where you have land. I can only get resources depending on the units that I control. And there are some stuff in the sea, like if I have a boat here in the ocean, I can get 2 food off of this hex. I can get 2 oil off this hex. But there's not gold in the ocean, so there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to do and a lot of decisions that we're going to have to make as you play. The 5th land gives us plenty of opportunities to make very rewarding player choices, which I think is very huge. So that is a really, really quick way on how the game is played. Please follow us now for our afterthoughts. Okay, so I guess first thing I should say is what you just saw is a very soft prototype that was sent to me by the guys at P.A.W.S. And I will say I'm actually pretty impressed with just the quality that they have in there. Even the artwork I know is not final quality or anything like that, but I still thought it was a good way to relay what's going on. Add to the fact that we're going to add in meeples or actually figures for the different army models, and I think we have something that's going to be visually very compelling. On top of that, I think that this game has a really, really good chance to get a lot of table play, again, for that 3, 4, 5 player gaming groups. This game is going to be able to, again, provide opportunities for table politics, backstabbing, negotiations, alliances, that whole thing, that whole dynamic element that puts an actual player against another player is going to be huge in this game. Now, one knock I'll say again is that the 2-player game is just, there's not a whole lot of depth there, and that the really big element of manipulating the world markets and forging alliances and breaking said alliances and doing that whole thing is kind of lost in a 2-player game. But that being said, it's still fun and it's a great way to teach the game. Now, I actually played this game for the first time with my son, who's only 5 years old. Now, while he didn't understand the complexities of the world market, or really the concept of money, he was able to make sure that he had enough of it and enough resources to successfully maneuver around the board and make sure he had enough resources to win or rather execute combat and manipulate or move his pieces on the board. So let's talk about that for a second. The fact that I have to actually use resources to not only engage a combat but also move my units around the board, I think is pretty huge. Now, the game really does a great job in balancing that, and the way the whole economy system, I think, is pretty unique. And again, and the fact that this game plays so fast, I think, is really another big plus in its corner. I think I've got a lot of really good things to say about this game. I definitely think this is a game that you guys should check out if you haven't already. Please take a look at the link below in this video. If you're looking at this on letslevelup.net, there'll be a link within the blog post itself that'll direct you to the Kickstarter page for the P.A.W.S guys. I think the Fifth Land is definitely a game worth checking out. So take a look at their Kickstarter page. And look at some of their backer rewards and some of their backing levels, and see if you guys can throw a backer or two their way, because again, I think this is a game that deserves to be made, and on top of that, I think that this is actually going to be a really fun game. So if you're looking for a good war game for 3 to 5 players, definitely I think the Fifth Land is one that you should get. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you guys are liking our content so far this year. We're kind of off to a slow start, but we look to do more things in the next coming weeks. So as always, we look forward to hearing your comments and your feedback. Hit us up on Twitter at Let's Level Up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and give us a thumbs up while you're there. Thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time, game on.